President Trump met with New York Governor Andrew Cuomo Thursday after the administration blocked New Yorkers from enrolling in global entry and other trusted traveler programs. Earlier this week, New York officials filed a lawsuit challenging that decision. According to the New York Times, the Homeland Security Department announced the ban because it can't access New York's DMV records. Governor Cuomo says the federal government is using the ban as leverage to get information on undocumented immigrants. For more, the author of that column, Azi Paybarah, joins me now in studio. Azi, thank you so much for being with us. So you report that the governor is trying to reach out, perhaps offer, a compromise to the president on this?
Right. What the governor said he wanted to offer them was access to the driving records of people that were applying to get into those trusted traveler programs. Now, they're considered valuable because the trusted traveler programs allow people to sort of get more quickly in and out of airports and borders. Now, what Cuomo said was that the FBI and the federal government already has access to a lot of the information that they say they can only get from the DMV records. So Cuomo argued, if you already have access to this and you want to get it through our records, fine, no harm, no foul. But he made it clear that he did not want to give the federal government access to all of the DMV records. So in his mind, it was a compromise where he didn't give up all that much.
Right. Now, can you remind us why New York is being singled out here by the White House?
In 2019, lawmakers in New York passed what is called a green light law that did two things. It allowed people to get driver's licenses regardless of their documentation status. So if you were a resident of New York and you were undocumented, you could now, for the first time, get a driver's license. That law took effect in January. It had a second component, which said those driving records will not be given over to federal officials for immigration purposes unless there was a court order. So, for example, if ICE or an ICE official wanted to look at somebody's records, they could only do it if a court and a judge signed off on it, which is a much higher bar than usually you get from just an administration or an official saying, I want to see this.
So do other states have similar laws in place, or do they have lower bars on that information?
More than a dozen states have some type of green light law. Fewer of them have laws that say you cannot access these driving records. I believe New Jersey passed a law, but it has not taken effect yet. And I believe Nevada has one that is similar to New York's that shields some level of driving record. And of course, we all know that President Trump knows New York and has had several fights with lawmakers in New York. So for a number of different reasons, he focused on this one. He saw what was happening in New York, and he jumped on the opportunity to highlight an issue that he liked to talk about, which is immigration. And this was one of the steps they took to try to pressure New York lawmakers to undo a law that he didn't like.
So then what is the president's argument or the White House's argument when critics say, look, this is purely political. You don't like New York. You can't punish the entire state.
Well, it's a great question. Why exactly do travelers get penalized for immigration officials not being able to access driving records? What Homeland Security officials say is we can't vet an applicant's record unless we see their DMV records. And DMV records includes things like if you got a speeding ticket, a moving violation, or if you were charged with drunk driving. What that has to do with traveling on airplanes? Not as clear.
Is there anyone that's done any of the math and looked at how many percent, what the percentage is of undocumented immigrants who've actually applied for this trusted traveler programs?
This is what's sort of amazing. There's about 50,000 New Yorkers who are in some type of application process of renewing their application to the Trusted Traveler Program, or were applying for the first time. How many undocumented residents are seeking to travel in and out of the country through this program? Not many. What most people think is happening is the federal government wants to get their toe into the DMV records, and once they can do it for one segment of the population, the fear that advocates have is that they'll start looking at all the records. And what lawmakers are very careful of is allowing that first initiation, that first contact with those records.
Sure. So there was a meeting today on this. Was there any progress? What came out of that meeting?
Surprise, surprise, there was a tweet from Trump.
Okay.
Which needled the governor by using a taunt of him, referring to one of the Godfather characters, Fredo, which we saw what happened when...
Oh, no.
Exactly. There was a meeting. It started a little bit later than scheduled, and then it ended, and both the president and the governor did not address reporters directly. But the acting secretary of the Department of Homeland Security put out a statement very quickly that said, New York, you're acting unilaterally. We would like to work with you, but you have to change your law, which was the position before the meeting.
There is a lawsuit, though, now, right? New York State officials have brought against the Department of Homeland Security. Is there any chance that that will resolve the matter?
It does not look like it. When you have a meeting with two principals, there is an expectation that some progress could be made. Somebody gives an inch, another person gives an inch, but there's a lawsuit. There was a taunting tweet. These are two very strong-willed executives. It does not look like today resulted in any major progress.
All right, so to be continued.
Exactly.
Azi Paybarah of the New York Times, thank you so much for coming to talk to us.
Thanks for having me.